Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again here at Sunnyside today. It's not much of a sunny Sunday at Sunnyside, but we need the rain, keeps things green. I'm Trevor Cameron, our general manager here. Say hi to Ben. He's fielding the questions in the background there.
Hi, everyone.
We'll have plenty of time for questions after if you have any, but as usual, we'll go fast and furious here and try to get through too much information on a quick amount of time. So hopefully everybody got the handout. Kind of a summer rose handout. It's not quite as long as my usual one, so it should be easy reading this time. But that'll kind of give you a few tips here, planting roses, caring for roses as we go through the seasons. We're going to kind of review some general rose information, but kind of also talk a little bit about deadheading and some specific things here over the summer as well. Just a reminder, you can always access the handout on the website. Let us know after the class. I'm happy to email it to anybody if you need it. This is also recorded, so if you miss anything, you can go back and watch it. If you're not bored of me yet, you can go back and watch it anytime you like. We'll have it up on our YouTube channel here a little bit later this afternoon. I kind of would start with, why buy a rose? Rose is kind of one of those nostalgic plants that's been around for centuries. Fragrance, beauty. Everybody likes the idea of a rose. It's one of the best choices for summer bloom. If I have a sunny garden and I want continuous flower all through the summer through till frost and fragrance a lot of times, rose is a great choice. I think sometimes maybe 10, 15 years ago, roses got a little bit of a bad name, but there's easy roses to grow. This is one of those things to me, like a vegetable garden, maybe a fruit tree, something, you grow the rose, you see the bloom, and you kind of get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, whether you stop by and give it a quick sniff or you cut it and bring it in a vase in the house to enjoy it. That's success as a gardener. So give the rose another chance. It's not a bad plant. There's some fabulous roses out there that maybe don't need quite as much maintenance as you think they do. So I'm going to run a little slideshow here. Give me 1 second. We'll do our fast and furious. There's me. If we kind of start with, talking about planting roses, I mentioned once already, we want sun, and more sun, at least 6 hours. And this is kind of one that I would say goes both ways. I mean, I have some customers and myself over the years, if I planted my rose where it gets maybe an eastern exposure and I get sun all morning through early afternoon, that's fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be afternoon, evening sun. Either one works. I find sometimes with morning sun, when we do have sunshine here in the summer, it will dry the dew off the foliage and keep that rose dry, which will mean a little bit less disease prone. So as long as we've got good 6 hours of sun, you're going to be fine. We don't want to tuck roses in shade. Minimal sun, a couple hours, they're going to struggle a little bit. They're going to get leggy. And again, we'll probably fight, excuse me, a little bit more on the disease end of things. On that note, to me, it's all about air circulation. I want air moving through. I want plant space. If I have a little 6-foot bed, I'm not going to plant 6 roses in there. I might plant 2 that'll have room to develop, grow, get good sun exposure and air circulation. If I have air moving through and I've got sun, again, I'm going to cut my disease down exponentially. You can look at roses as far as height. A lot of them are classified tall, medium, stagger. I want a 6-foot rose in the back, and then I can have a 4-foot rose staggered in front. Excuse me. That's an easy way to go. But pay attention to your heights. We don't want to bury a tall one on the edge and put a smaller one behind it. Again, it will struggle with air circulation and sunshine as well. Just a kind of quick note, when I talk about sun and air, it really goes back to disease. All of us who grow roses know about black spot, mildew, different things that probably we're prone to here with our wet spring weather. If I'm a little fungus spore, I'm blowing around today, I'm blowing around in the wind, and I have to land on a wet leaf and sit there for say 4 hours. Now I have a chance to attach myself, propagate, and now we start with the issue. So if I have sun, I have good air and some wind moving through there, and my foliage stays dry, I'm probably going to have a little better luck without having to go do a bunch of spraying. So like it says there, stagger plants. I'm not looking at putting roses in kind of a square or rectangular pattern. We want to kind of do this like a W. Now I've got sun, I've got air, I've got wind moving through, where those roses will have a better chance to get going. Drainage is a must. We have to get the water out of the soil, especially here in the winter. This is not a plant that likes hard pan clay. It's a plant that likes good drainage. So the soil, like all plants, is key to success. Make sure that we've got drainage in there so that we don't have issues down the road. I would always dig a nice sized hole, twice as big, twice as wide, twice as deep. Most roses you'll see at our place are in a 5-gallon pot. So you're talking about digging maybe a, 1.5 2 foot hole by 1.5 2 feet deep, mixing in some nice amendment to energize that rose. We'll talk about here in a second, and we're going to have better success. For me, sometimes the moat doesn't make sense on the sheet there, but when I put a plant in, not just a rose, but really anything, I want to get that planted properly, get it all packed, get it fed, do all the things, but I'll leave a little rim, kind of a donut of soil, maybe 6-8 inches away from the trunk. I've got maybe a 1 or 1.5 foot circle there that kind of acts like a moat. Now I can focus my fertilizing in that circle to keep that plant happy. And when I water here, especially the first summer, I've got an area where I can really saturate that ground and keep that plant happy during the warmer summer months. So like I mentioned, amend your soil. I use compost for just about anything. People may have a little special concoction they like to use. That's fine. As long as it's composted manure, planting compost, we would have EB Stone organic compost here. And keep in mind a rose planting mix. We get a specific bag in that's just for roses here. It's got everything you need kind of mixed into one. You can use it as both an amendment, mixing it in like you would compost, or let's say that I want to plant my rose in a container. This would be rose potting soil. So this would have a little bit more than typical potting soil to keep that rose happy growing in a container long term. We have that again from EB Stone Organics here. I'm always looking to kind of amend, 1/3 of amendment to 2/3 of my native soil. I dig my hole. I've got my little land pile over here that I took out. I'm going to mix that up with about 1/3 compost or 1/3 of the rose planting mix to backfill that mixture in there. Then I will always have a nice dressing of compost as mulch over the top as well. Help me with the watering. And again, creating that moat will help me focus the water and the fertilizer on that rose here for the summer. Roses are heavy feeders. This is not a plant that we can put in the ground and walk away. Yes, it'll grow. Yes, you'll get some flowers. But, I want to plant a rose because I want a bunch of flowers through the whole summer. I want to smell them and I want the color. So if we keep these fed, you're going to have a much better luck. So go with an organic rose food's the way to go to me. We've got the EB Stone rose fertilizer here. Alfalfa meal is kind of one of those little extra special amendments that intensifies colors, has a lot of trace elements and minerals in there that roses tend to love and a lot of other plants. And then Epsom salts, that's magnesium sulfate. If you're not familiar with that, that's kind of one of those little magic potions. I can use a little bit of that when I do my feeding. That strictly increases bud count, which means more bloom. So again, not just for rose, a lot of other plants, but Epsom salts is a useful amendment, particularly again with roses, where I can get some extra bud, some extra bloom. It doesn't suffice as a general fertilizer. I want to make sure that's clear, but as kind of an extra thing, you can mix a little bit of that in with the roses as well. Water them in real thoroughly once you plant them. And then again, I'd always add a little bit of mulch or compost on there. As we're getting into the season now, now it's kind of time to care for them. You planted them back in March. Maybe you're still going to come down, hopefully, and grab a couple to add to the collection in the garden. But as we care for these over the season, again, they're very heavy feeders. I want to get on, kind of a 6-week schedule. I want to feed them when I plant them. I want to go back and do the same thing again. If I have old established roses, it's no different. I want to make sure I get those fed coming out of winter and get on a 6-week schedule where I'm going to have a happy, healthy plant. You know, a well-fed shrub of any kind, including a rose, is always going to be more resilient against bugs, against disease, against other issues, even on this long, cold, wet spring we're having this year. So try to get those things fed if you haven't right away, and then get on that regular schedule. You can see, you know, kind of the ratio. If I've got doing a new one, it's a little bit less. But if I'm kind of repeat feeding an established rows, you know, a cup of food is great. A half a cup of alfalfa, maybe a couple tablespoons of Epsom salts. You know, that will really keep that rose kicking here as we go through the season. You know, I'll show you kind of at the end of the slideshow. I brought one in. Ours are almost blooming finally, but I'll kind of show you a little bit of deadheading tips. Most people, I think, don't deadhead their roses, or maybe don't do it quite the right way, so they can get another bloom a little bit quicker. So I'll show you that here towards the end. I got a plant sitting right here for that occasion. And a big one at the bottom one for me, avoid overhead watering. You know, we talked about fungus, we talked about wet foliage, air circulation. You know, if I'm walking out and I'm blessing my roses every night when I get home from work, I got wet leaves all night, and I am going to guarantee you you're going to have mildew, black spot, and all the issues you don't want. So try to water in the morning and water at the base. You know, if you've got a sprinkler system, you know, it's not the end of the world, but those typically would come on early in the morning again, so that when that sun comes up, we dry the foliage off. We don't have the issues. So I would never recommend watering at night and late in the evening. And B, try not to overhead water. If you're going to hand water them, focus it on those moats or the base of the plant, so we keep the foliage as dry as we possibly can. Now, starting out the season, kind of, we rewind back away, you know, I don't want any leaves left from the year before. You know, roses sometimes. This year, not so much. We got a little bit colder winter, but on a typical winter, I've had roses blooming at Christmas, you know, or even January, where we don't get very cold. You know, that's great. But when we start that rose over, to me, the deadline is President's Weekend, you know, mid-February. I don't want anything left. I don't want old leaves. I don't want old foliage. I don't want debris at the base. I want to make sure I start that plant clean for the season. So I'm going to get that plant always cleaned up, stripped, and cut back. My rule is kind of always knee high in the spring, you know, not a climbing rose because we want the wood, but on a typical shrub roses, we want to get them down to about knee high. I'm going to get rid of weak canes, dead wood. I kind of, as a general rule, say if it's thinner than a pencil, get rid of it. You know, I want a nice, thick candelabra, open center, where those branches are coming out and outward and up. I don't want anything crossing back in the middle. I want to try to keep that center open, and then I'll have a nicer shaped plant, but also a more resilient plant as well. So it's knee high in spring, and then in the fall, we'll talk about a little bit of rose care at my fall pruning class later this year, but we would talk about hip high, you know, getting those roses cut back to where they're a comfortable height. They're not going to break in the wind or we get snow. They're going to be nice and sturdy for the winter. And then that next spring, I can get them cut down a little farther, and off we go for another season. The last one on there, because someone always asks, can I move my rose? Now that Trevor told me I can't have it in shade, I need to get it in sun. You know, it's a tough move on an old established rose during the growing season. You're always going to have near 100% success if you wait and do this when they're dormant, you know, say Thanksgiving till the first part of March or so. Get a move then if you can. If it's only been in the ground since spring or a year, yeah, maybe I can get away with moving it here real quick. But try to only do your transplanting, especially on older ones, when they're dormant in the middle of winter. You know, I would always start watching for the disease and insect early. You know, I have a lot of customers, not just roses, but all plants, you know, come down here the first week of July and say, I never did anything to my rose. I haven't fed it. It's got some black spot. It got bugs on it. What do I do? You know, if we attack this, you know, starting in March and kind of get on a monitor schedule, we can keep care of it pretty easily. If we let it get decimated with black spot or mildew or aphids or anything, we're going to have a little tougher time getting rid of it later in the season. So start early. If you haven't, we'll make that note for 2023, and it's not too late to get started now, but we'll talk about some different ways to attack that here in a second. You know, the three things to me are right there. You know, this is your choice as a gardener. You know, I'm always honest in the class. You know, I'm a green guy. I don't like chemicals. I hate systemic chemicals. in my own yard. And it's a tough one to kind of choose. Do I go the easy route and use a synthetic chemical, or do I go the natural route, maybe put in a little bit more time as far as me spraying more often and monitoring a little bit? So I'll leave that choice up to you. I'm going to give you the three. To me, choice number one is the drench. I want to buy a bottle of Rose Systemic. Please, not the stuff with the garbage fertilizer. We would never carry that, but something that controls insect and disease as a drench. The typical systemics with food only do insects. I personally am not as worried about bugs up here. That's an easy thing I can watch come out there and spray with the soap or something easy and take care of aphids. We got to keep the black spot and the mildew away. Those are the things we got to worry about, excuse me, in our climate. So if we choose to do the drench, that's something we would mix in our watering can, not spray, let that soak into the root system. The rose would absorb that all the way through its tissue, and that would be kind of shields up, for about 6 weeks. I can get on a 6-week schedule with that if that's your choice. We could apply a systemic style foliar spray. Now that would not be poured in the watering can, but that would be something I'd put in my sprayer. I'd wet the foliage down. That would soak in about an hour, and I've got about a month where I don't have to worry about bug or disease. The third choice is, again, what I do, it's a little bit more time, but we use something natural. Neem oil is a great way to go. We carry Rose RX, which is kind of a neem oil product from Bonide, and that's a fungicide, insecticide, miticide, all the above. So if I don't let my rose get too bad, and I can spray that neem oil on there and get on kind of maybe it's a twice a month thing when it's real wet, I'm going to be golden towards the summer. It's going to be just as effective. To be brutally honest, if I let my rose go and I come in here in July and I've got black spot everywhere and it's got mildew on it, then I'm going to have a tougher time getting rid of that with something like neem oil. So try to get on it early, start some sort of program for yourself, and you're going to be happy roses. Now, I'll say this with all three of those. Let's play that I forgot. I'll play me. I forgot to spray my roses. I've got some black spot. I've got some issues here in the early summer. What do I do? Yes, I'm going to try to spray to control it, but at that point, I'm probably going to let whatever blooms are up, budding and ready to go do their thing. And when I deadhead, I'm probably going to try to cut them back a little ways, which is fine for the rose, and let them rejuvenate new foliage. That would allow me to get some food on it, cut it back, and then as that new growth comes up, it will be clean, and I could use my neem oil or my product of choice and start keeping it that way at that point, okay? So there might be a little tip. Whenever you've got disease issues, get the foliage off the ground level. We don't want this festering down there as a mulch. That's a really easy way to carry one problem from 2021 to 2022 to now 2023. Want to make sure we get that cleaned up as it falls. Now, just to show you, so I'm not pulling bags in and out of the camera here, here's a few things kind of that we talked about. Again, I think EB Stone Organics is the finest organic company around. We carry all their products here in soils. You would find alfalfa meal here at the store. There's the rose and flower food. You got a 4-pound pouch, or if you've got a bunch of roses and want to save a little money, get a 15-pound bag. It never goes bad. You can use it year to year. Just keep it dry, but you'll get a little more value buying a bigger bag if you need a bunch of it or want to carry it over for another year. There's the Epsom salts. Comes in a bunch of different brand names and packages. We carry the EB Stone, but that magnesium sulfate, again, is a magic little amendment to get me more bud and bloom. And then one that I always kind of bring up with roses is Sulpo Mag. That's a little different amendment. I don't use it as much during the growing season, but as you get to fall or early spring, that first feeding of the year, that may be something to consider throwing on. I've had a lot of folks with maybe older roses that were struggling. This might give the root system a little kick and give you also maybe some more canes off that old graft or the root system that might help it recover a little bit. So that's one of those little extra things to keep in mind, maybe for the later fall feeding going into winter, or we do that coming out of the winter each year. There's the rose and flower mix right there. So again, nobody here, including me, is going to hate you if you just use compost. That's always a great amendment. But if you wanted something specific that has a lot of these things mixed together for you as a gardener, try the planting mix. That's a great amendment. And especially if you're growing them in pots, roses make excellent container specimens for color and sun. That's what I would use for a potting soil instead of our regular Edna's Best and adding some things to it. Just get that. It's got some alfalfa in there. It's got some other things with it that'll help keep that rose happy in the container. So here's the sprays we talked about. If you come down and want to look, there's our systemic drench. That is something that is absolute chemical, murder, death, kill style, but sometimes it's a no-brainer option for some customers that just want to pour it on the base and walk away and not worry about it as much. The drench is an option. There's the rose shield. That would be our systemic type spray that would go on the plant. I will say with both of those, yes, you're taking a chance with some of the bees, to be honest with you. And especially if you spray, don't spray them when they're in bloom. You get some spray on them earlier. That will certainly help. But with all sprays, including the neem oil, we would avoid spraying the actual flowers or when they're in full bloom. Try to keep that's not part of it. And then we have natural stuff here. And I put both those up there because this is a little confusing. We carry both because some people gravitate towards a label that says neem oil. Others see that Rose RX label and know that that's been something that's helped them over the years. So we have both. Those are exactly the same product. So we maybe have more of one or less of another. It doesn't matter. The label's different, but that is exactly the same product inside of there. So neem oil is the key. Again, our natural organic solution for the bugs, the disease, and the mites. That would be our green choice. Now, if we start talking a little bit about selecting roses, we do have a nice stock left. Roses of all things have been really popular this year for some reason, but we do have a nice selection left of a lot of good ones. But we get new roses in every year. This is one shot a year. We're kind of, I'll speak for me. I'm OCD, as everybody knows, and I'm a little bit of control. So we like planting our own. I don't buy a lot of roses in from another nursery. We like to ship our own bare root every January, prune them properly, take care of them properly, plant them properly, and sell them to good local customers. So this is not something I can't replace in the middle of summer. When we're out of a variety, we'll see you again in 2023 kind of thing. I've already ordered our rose crop for next year. We'll get a little bit more again, like we usually do, but we'll have a great selection again for 2023 if we are out of something particular you're looking for as well. I think it's pretty cool that we test roses here every year. I've done this for years, even at another nursery I ran. So the growers will send us unlabeled roses that just have a weird, 825-FA23, whatever, and I'll plant them. I'll feed them, but I don't spray those because I want to see how it does. If you came down here, Mrs. Johnson, and wanted to try one of the new roses next year, how would you feel comfortable taking that home if you didn't spray? Would it perform okay? So we kind of run a trial every year where the stuff for next year we have back in the back. No one will ever see them here except for the staff. And I just watch them. Yeah, do they smell good? Did we like the flower? Did it grow real well? Did it get issues with the foliage? And then we can make decisions on, yes, let's bring those new ones in and maybe not a different one. So that's something we do every year. Look at one thing I think a lot of gardeners are figuring out with roses is budded versus own root. Now, again, it doesn't really matter, for most of us, especially kind of in our little area here, but some roses only will grow when they're budded or grafted onto a rootstock. Other roses do fabulous as own root. There's no graft. If I'm in a colder climate, Eastern Washington in our state, up in the mountains, different areas, an own root is always going to be extremely hardy. If I get a rose to fail, it's usually the graft, and then we end up with the root system rose, which is garbage. We throw it away and we go get a different rose. So again, it's not that you can find every rose on its own root, but more and more every year, if I have a choice here for us, we get it on root because I think it's a superior plant without the graft. It's the same rose, nothing changes, but I think it's a little bit easier, especially to not worry about it in the wintertime. For that same reason, we don't do a lot of tree roses. I know a lot of people call and ask, and sometimes we'll bring a few in. But I worry about those in the winter. And typically in the wintertime, it's not the actual rose bush that's not hardy. It's the graft that holds the bush onto the stalk, and it's the graft at the base that holds that stalk onto the root system. So yes, you can insulate them. You can help it through the winter. You can keep it in a pot. Maybe you protect them a little bit on the cold spells. But that's in essence why we don't do a lot of tree roses, is I worry about the consistent hardiness year to year to year on those. I'll mention miniature roses, something we haven't done a lot of here at Sunnyside. We are going to plant some mini roses next year. I think they're great for containers or the garden. And as I looked around, a lot of people ask, and I think they're worth trying. And for us again, I'd be a little bit more careful where you have them, the drainage, the sun, the winter time on some, but we will have a handful, some color options in starting next January for us here at Sunnyside as well. And the last thing there, this class isn't about me. It's not about Ben. It's not about Sunnyside. It's about you. I mean, you joined us here today because either you have roses and you're trying to learn a little bit more, or maybe you want to grow some roses and try them in your yard. Be honest with yourself. This is a huge point to me with this rose class. If you are not going to spray, you're not going to deadhead, you're not going to do some of this work, let's steer you towards a different classification of rose that maybe doesn't need the spraying and the maintenance perhaps that some do. If you're going to try to grow, ones that don't do well up here, sterling silvers and tropicanas and on and on and on, maybe you're signing up for some extra time. I've done it both ways. I have shrub roses now because I have 2 young children and don't have time to do as much of the maintenance. Someday when they're out the house, I'll probably have my collector roses back because I do love roses, because I'll have more time to spray and pick leaves and kind of do some work on them like that too. So the point of it is, this is your yard, this is your rose. Be honest with yourself as a gardener. How much time are you going to put into this plant? And that would help us sell you the proper one that's going to make you happy and successful. Now, if we look at a few styles of roses here real quick, hybrid tea, if I go to the florist shop and buy my nice wife a dozen roses, I'm buying hybrid tea roses that were grown somewhere, usually South America, or at a rose grower in a bouquet. I want a long stem single rose of all kinds of colors. That's our hybrid tea. Grandiflora is the same long stem with multiple flowers, usually 3, sometimes 5 at the top of the stem. Those are typically a little taller rose. The exhibition rose might be a good way to think of grandiflora. They're like hybrid teas, lots of different colors, but maybe just a little taller. And so again, multiple flowers at the top. I love floribundas myself because I want a bushier, fuller, maybe a little bit lower rose in my landscape. I have bouquets of flowers. I'm not interested in cutting them to bring them inside, but I want to be out working in the yard, smell some fragrance. I want to see that particular color all through the summer and the fall. Floribunda to me is a great landscape rose, where I'm going to have some decent height and some, again, a lot of different color choices. We look at climbing roses. Rose isn't going to cling and wrap itself around a trellis or an arbor or some structure. You're going to have to attach it to it. This is something that you'll train to grow up and get tall and go over the top of an arch or up a trellis or up a wall. Again, full sun, they're very easy to do, but it's not a vine. We're just kind of going vertical and letting that shrub rose get much taller so that we have the climbing rose we're looking for. Ground covers are a great option. We carry quite a bit of drift roses, flower carpet roses, happy trails is another one that we carry a few colors of. That's where I want filler. I want a low, 2 foot, maybe 3 foot at the most rose that I can cut down hard and easy. I don't have to deadhead. Sometimes I have to spray maybe a little bit depending on the variety, but I want something I could plant on a sunny border and have a massive amount of flower power that just takes care of itself for the summer. I feed them, like I said, maybe I spray a little bit depending on which one, but I'm not out probably doing the deadheading and the pruning like I would on a typical shrub rose. Then you'll see David Austin. You know, we have a few left. We'll have a really nice batch again next January as more come available again. But we do carry quite a bit of David Austin roses. You know, that is the intense fragrance. If you're going for smell, the worst smelling David Austin rose is going to outsmell probably any other rose on the property. So if you're into the fragrance, check out those old quartered kind of English roses. We've got quite a bit of those around here as well. And then shrub roses. You know, this to me, this is the direction I said for me, you know, where I want flower, I like some fragrance, depending on which one I choose. Some smell, some don't as much, but I don't want to spray and I don't want to deadhead as much, you know, right now. And spray and shrub roses are a really easy way, again, to get the color, to get fragrance perhaps, and eliminate some of that maintenance. So we've got a nice selection of hybrid rugosas back there, some lower stuff. You'll see quite a bit of shrub roses around that you could plant, enjoy the color, and not have to worry about doing some of the maintenance as well. So again, be honest with yourself. You know, these are the questions you should ask yourself here after the class. Am I going to spray? Am I going to deadhead? You know, do I want cut flowers? Do I want fragrance? Or do I just want flower power? You know, I would think of these things before you kind of make your choice. I'm no different than any of you. I come to the nursery and I'm like, whoa, I want to have that plant. Do I really have the right place to put it? Am I going to put in the time to grow it right? Think about those things before you come down and pick a rose, because there's a lot of options and we can help steer you towards one that will be to your liking. Because again, I don't think there's any better sun shrub you're going to get flower power out of the entire summer than a rose. So I'm going to show you just a few real quick, you know, a couple of the new ones in here and just a few examples of kind of some of the ones that we typically have around each season. Perfume Factory, you can probably tell by the name, that one smells really good. That's a brand new one this year that we tried last year. We still have some of those. All My Lovings, another great pink one. Pretty Lady, I actually brought one of those in behind me. It's not quite blooming yet. That's one from the Downton Abbey collection from Weeks. It's got great smell. That's a really easy little kind of floribunda to grow with that cluster, the little taller on the hybrid tea. Love at First Sight. You know, there's a lot of good red roses out there, but that one's going to have a little bit of that bicolor look in the middle, which is really sharp. Painted Porcelain, kind of a different color, kind of a silvery pink. And if we just want to go, you know, classic red long stem hybrid tea, we've got Mr. Lincoln. We have a few other ones. Mr. Lincoln's probably a little more prone to some of the issues we've talked about. Try something different like Firefighter or Veterans Honor. You know, maybe not quite as intense as smell as Mr. Lincoln, but fabulous red rose. It's got much better foliage. A good yellow one like Henry Fonda. And if you like white, you will not beat Sugar Moon. I mean, we've tried a lot of whites around here, but for a combination of fragrance and clean plant, I think Sugar Moon's at the top of the white hybrid tea list to me. Francis Meelan. Now I'm going for that pastel pink, but super heavy fragrance. The Meelan roses are extremely old school rose fragrance. So if I want heavy smell, that's one you may try to locate. And then maybe something a little different. Good as Gold. You know, it's kind of halfway in between the yellow and the orange. That's a pretty bright one. It's a little bit different color. Just Joey. If I want apricot-y, you know, kind of peachy color, that's the superior variety in that color range here for Western Washington. And then Pinkerbell's a little bit newer one. But again, I think a lot of the breeders have done a good job at having a base color and then taking that kind of, we call it kind of that Piketty edge, where they took a paintbrush and kind of added a second color on the petals. Another very striking one for the landscape. Now, Grandiflora is just a couple here, but these will be your tall ones again. So big, huge, long stems with multiple flowers. I'll tell you right now, we still have some because I get more of Twilight Zone than any rose. But if you like purple, deep dark purple, and heavy smell. Twilight Zone will knock your socks off. I think that's one of the best roses here on the property. We do still have some. There'll probably be a race down to grab the rest of them, but purple's a cool color for rose. A lot of them are pretty hard to do up here, but Twilight Zone's been an excellent one for our location. Sweet Spirit, we still got a few of those. Parade Days got that kind of variegated flower where I've got two-tone pink with cream, and you kind of get different looks on different flowers. Are kind of fun for some folks. I call that one the Sandra Bullock Rose, but Miss Congeniality. Again, I've got that two-tone look with that kind of painted petals on top of the base color. Sitting Pretty looks a little more like kind of rugosa or shrub rose. Been really good disease resistant with, again, good heavy fragrance. And then another one of the BBC roses, Anna's Promise from Downton Abbey, that would get me kind of that apricot-y, bronzy color, a little bit different for some folks that like cool colors. Coretta Scott King, bicolor there. And I think we still have a couple happy-go-luckies. If you like a yellow tall one, that would be the one to go with Grandiflora. So Floribundas, again, the bushier, little bit shrubbier look to them, multiple flowers in bouquets. We still got a great selection of a bunch of Floribundas out there. We tend to get a little bit more of those each year. Arctic Blue, different color. Burst of Joy, if you like some orangey kind of creamsicle color. Celestial Nights, an awesome kind of plum, a little bit different color, getting towards that purple again. Cinco de Mayo always just sounds fun to me. That's kind of got a kaleidoscope, 2-3 different colors going as the flowers age. Some of the iconic roses are interesting. If you like something a little different, I've kind of got a base color with a little bullseye color in the middle. We do mango lemonade, regular lemonade. We've got a few different ones back there. In Your Eyes is another one, depending on the colors you like. Those are kind of fun, a little bit different for roses. If I was probably picking one, I love yellow flowers, but if I was picking one rose to grow, it would be Julia Child to me. I think that's the poster child for easy, disease resistant, strong fragrance, its own root. That would be at the top of my list. If you like yellow and wanted to try a rose, that's one I would definitely steer you towards. Life of the Party is a little bit newer one, again, with kind of those old school peace colors, a little pink, a little yellow, decent fragrance. Lavender has always been a really tough one. I mentioned a couple earlier in the class that are tough to grow up here. To me, when this came out, it set the standard for lavender, especially for Floribunda. Decent fragrance and a great lavender color. That's a pretty easy one to grow if you like that lavender color range. Queen of Elegance, another easy one to do, a little bit different color on that. Then we've got Rosie the Riveter. We got to get our biceps up for that one. If you like the orangey kind of amber colors, Rosie's a great rose. That's part of that week's Easy to Love collection. Julia Child, Rosie the Riveter, there's a bunch of them in there that are pretty low maintenance. Yes, we deadhead them. Yes, we feed them, but we don't have to worry about the spraying quite as much. Sun Sprite has always been my favorite, and I can't believe they're not blooming yet. That should say how the weather has gone up here this spring. But Sun Sprite's always the first one to start blooming, typically by Mother's Day. We've always got Sun Sprites with bud and bloom starting to grow. They smell great, and off they go. That's a great yellow Floribunda. They're all covered in flower buds, but I don't see any yellow yet, so they're getting close. I think this week we got some sun coming. We'll probably start to see a lot of these start to open up and start to bloom. And if you like orange, a little pumpkin patch, that's an easy one to remember. Climbers, I'll say this before I show you climbers. I don't know what happened this year. We get a couple hundred climbing roses in as part of our rose collection. I have 0 climbing roses left. I don't know why everybody went for climbing roses this year. We've ordered extra for 2023, so you can make yourself a note, come down and grab one next January, February, March. As we get them in, we'll have a great selection, but I don't have any left. So this is a tough one to talk much about, but you'll see a few different colors here. Lots of options for climbers. 4th of July, we got Joseph Coat. The Eden collection, we have Pink Eden, we got White Eden, We'll have red Eden next year. We've got pretty and pink Eden. There's a whole bunch of those. That is the #1 sold climbing rose in the entire world. So Eden, is a good performer. Don Juan's an old school red. Purple Splash, kind of a different fun one. Golden Opportunities, a newer one the last few years that we've really liked. We'll have that again. Now, if we look at a few shrubs, these are kind of those bullseye roses again, I call them, in your eyes, easy on the eyes. This is shrub roses again, are ones that I'm probably not going to have to spray quite as much or deadhead. So if I go the shrub route, maybe a little hardier, most all these are own root, and I don't have as much maintenance. So this is where we kind of start looking at some other options. So we've got some of those. We look at rugosas. I was just down having dinner at the Everett waterfront this week, and the cities use these a lot, especially near coastal areas. They'll take some salt, some harsh conditions, but these are no-brainer roses. They got great smell. They bloom. We can get low ones. We don't have to get huge ones. They'll sucker and spread and naturalize in the yard, which is great for most. Maybe some don't like that trait of rugosas. But these are ones, honestly, if I walked out and sprayed that with anything with chemical in it, I would burn it. We don't spray rugosa roses at all, ever. Yes, I can put some insecticidal soap or something mild on them if I get aphids, but you're not going to battle the black spot, the mildew, the foliage issues with rugosas. They're very, very resilient and easy to grow. The other bonus with rugosa is I get those, I used to call them sea tomatoes or large rose hips. Those are real pretty in the fall. As we start to get into fall and winter season, I'll have those bright orangey red fruits on that plant, again, to add a little bit more interest through the season. Snow pavement, purple pavement, all those are rugosa hybrids, but again, lower. I want something that grows maybe 3 feet tall, that'll spread side to side and cover up an area. That's a great one for naturalizing. Stuff like Hansa, Linda Campbell, again, hybrid rugosas with very clean foliage and great smell, but a little bit taller. And then last year, ground covers, we've get some, like I mentioned earlier, the Happy Trails collection. I want something with color, big bouquets of flowers that stays low, that I don't have to deadhead. That's the difference with these. I still feed them. I perhaps spray them if I need to, but I don't deadhead. These will bloom, grow, and then bloom on top of themselves the whole summer. Then I can go out in the wintertime and prune it back hard and let them start over again. It's a real easy type of rose to grow in the landscape. There's a couple other colors, the Playful Happy Trails, Sunset Happy Trails. We just got our drift, the first of our drift roses this week. These we don't grow. We buy some of these in, but we've got a couple colors and we'll have some more coming. But again, drift says it all. I want to plant 3 of them in a mass and let those drift, and cover a sunny area, something lower that I'll get color on. I'm not interested as much in fragrance, but I want the color and I want the easy care and not have to deadhead. Then we've got flower carpet. There's a great landscape picture where, again, you can see somebody, nice hedge, I've got full sun. I just want color out there. I don't necessarily care. These don't smell, but I want the bright colors. There's lots of pinks and whites and scarlet, amber, different tones in this flower carpet series, but something I can keep small. They're on their own root. I don't have to deadhead again. I just feed them, watch the spray a little bit, and I've got happy roses all through the summer. And then last, we got English here. So you'll see again that kind of old school grows, often really heavy, intense fragrance, taller plants a lot of times, but that kind of classic quartered rose look like you would get with David Austin's, or some of these are from Weeks and Star roses that look like that style. So all dressed up. Fun in the Sun is a really intense fragrant one, kind of a fun coppery apricot-y colors in that. State of Grace, another newer one. Delish, that's a perfect English rose picture right there, where you can kind of see that classic quartered rose look. And then some others, Sweet Mademoiselle, Edith's Darling is one that stays a little smaller, that's got great smell, that's a shrub rose. That's an easy one to do as well if you like that look. And lastly, just the the new stuff for this year. I've still got some of these in stock. Other ones we'll have restock again for next January. But the ones that we trialed in 2021 that we chose to bring in for our customers this year are these. We've got Chantilly Cream, Pop Art's really funky. It's kind of a fun flower if you like something different. Forever Amber is a great Floribunda that's got that kind of buttery, creamy apricot tones to it. And again, I think they're getting really close to that blue color of a rose, which a lot of people ask for. That Sweet Madam Blue is really close with that lavender kind of plum blue color to it. That's another excellent one that just came out. And there you go. We got our last web addresses on there. We've got a rose page. You can look at all these pictures, everything we tend to carry, our rose list that we started with. We are sold out of many of them at this point in early summer. We'll have them again for next year. And you can always email us there at Sunnyside Nursery at msn.com. We're happy to help with questions, send pictures. I will say this, after this class, typically a lot of people send a picture of a rose in their yard and say, please tell me what variety this is. That's really hard to do with the hundreds of roses available over all these years. I would probably have you send you towards the Weeks Roses website or Star Roses and Plants. You can look through pictures and pictures and pictures and probably get close to finding yours if you can. You certainly are welcome to try, but sometimes that's a tough chore for us without counting the petals, smelling the rose, looking at the foliage. Excuse me, there's a lot of other clues without just looking at the rose, if that makes sense. I'm going to stop share here. And we'll go back. I'll just bring up a couple things here and we'll cut you loose. I'm doing okay on time again. I brought one rose in here because I just kind of wanted to show you as an example. Reach over here. So you can see our typical rose. You know, when we planted this in January, you know, it had like 3-4 inch canes, little pieces of wood. We prune them down to start them low and develop a new structure. So there's a perfectly healthy rose. I've got flower buds and almost all my tips ready to go. This happens to be a yellow one called Gilded Sun, which doesn't really matter. But if you look at that, what do I have? Again, I've got that open center with my canes coming out and up. I'm not letting things cross. I want sun and I want air. If I look at this one, when this flower's done, you know, all through this summer and the fall, you know, how do I take care of this? If you've got any kind of rose and you want to increase your bud and bloom, which I would, I want to prune them back properly. So when this flower is done, I can follow this stem anywhere I want, all the way down. And as long as I cut above a leaflet that has 5 leaves in the count, not 3, not 7, always 5. If I prune above that, that's where I'm going to get a brand new shoot, and then off we go again. Now I'll have another bud and bloom out here in say 4 or 6 weeks. I keep it fed. I'm going to repeat flower that way. If I don't deadhead, it's going to take this little guy at least twice that long to figure out where to produce another flower from. So like we talked about earlier, I can get my height down by deadheading down a little farther. If I want the height, I can stay up a little taller and cut it above 5 leaves. It's up to you, kind of where you have it in your yard, but I can do either way. The biggest thing for me is you saw me point at this one and this one. I want something going out from the center. I don't want to cut this one because what's going to happen, here comes my bloom and now it's going right across the middle of the plant. And again, I'm cutting down air circulation and the shape of the rose bush. So go outside leaflets, always 5, and that's going to get you a quick rejuvenation. The other thing I just wanted to show you, I picked this one in particular. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but bud, I've got all these ready to go. But what happened here in the middle? Can you see that one cane that came up? What it's done is forked and just sat there. It's healthy. The leaves look great. It's not that I have to throw this away. But if I leave that, I'm not going to get a flower bud on there. So when I'm watching my own roses in April and May into June, if I see places like that where my foliage has forked and not produced a bud, I'm going to take a quick second and just cut that down another few inches above a set of 5 leaves. Now I'll get a flower bud out of there and off we go. So I've always called that blind shoots. Myself, I think you could probably just call it a little forked stem, whatever you want. But if you want to, again, maximize the flower, try to look for those things in the bushes this time of year, get those cut out of there. And now I can get a flower bud up and off we go like nothing happened. So I just wanted to show you those two real quick. Now, like for all classes here at Sunnyside, we got some great specials going. It's not supposed to rain as much this afternoon, and tomorrow Memorial Day is looking like we're dry. So come up, do some shopping. We got 30% off all the rose bushes here on the property. That's a little extra discount to hopefully get some folks down to look at some cool roses. 30% off roses. The EB Stone organic rose food that you saw on the slideshow, the pouches or the large bags, those are both 20% off. Again, we want to sell you success, and we have to feed our roses. I think I've said that 50 times since we started. Feed them, you're going to have better luck. So get some good organic rose fertilizer. And if you want to try that rose soil, the specific rose planting mix, whether you want to plant roses in pots and use it like potting soil, or get some to mix in with your holes as you're adding them, we've got that on 20% off as well. So you got kind of a little bonus discount on roses, and you get 20% on a few of the good products as well. So take advantage of the specials. Again, I apologize. I said this yesterday, but kind of we had some circumstances I don't need to get into, but we've canceled our summer vegetable class on next Saturday, the 4th. And we've also had to remove the balcony gardening class on the 11th. So I sincerely apologize if you're looking forward to those. We'll have the information sheets up there. We just can't do those two classes. We will be back here. You're stuck with me again in mid-June, but we'll be back here on June 18th. Will be summer pruning, and we'll kind of have a fun pruning discussion about what kind of to look to prune here as we come out of spring and get into early summer. I think we'll finally have some summer weather by then, I would hope, right? Now I'll just say, Ben, I'm hoping we got some good questions today.
We do have a couple of good questions there, Trev.
Okay.
First one I'll throw at you. Are you aware of any correlation between rose color and disease resistance?
There's not really a correlation as easy as that. Maybe a couple, I would say. Typically the two would be the lavenders to the blues, and most of those we can't do up here. They like more heat would be the main thing, but they're also very disease prone. But I would not say there's a color correlation for disease resistance. It's more about genetics. What was the parent rose? How was it crossed? And as these get trialed, this is not plants that some breeder at one of the rose growers just magically makes a new rose and says, let's go sell it. These sit and get trialed in multiple parts of the country to say, I look at let's put it this way. When I look at a catalog and I try to evaluate what we want to have for our customers here at Sunnyside, there's specific roses that are labeled great in California, great in the Southeast, great in the Midwest, whatever it is. And I stick with obviously the Pacific Northwest. So there's a testing ground down in Oregon. And so we try to get things, and again, we test the new ones up here ourselves, but we want to stick with stuff that will grow in our area.
Okay, next one. Any suggestions for companion planting with roses?
Well, again, I think there's a lot of plants you could put with roses. You want to make sure, I don't want ground cover right up at the base of my rose, because the problem is with the fertilizer, I want the rose to get it, not what's covering up the soil. So I would always try to leave the base of the rose empty. But if you're talking about mixing things underneath it, I think there's a lot of options. I know a lot of people kind of go with the English garden look and utilize plants like lavender would be a great choice for a sunny location. But really anything that's good for full sun, likes good drainage, and doesn't mind some extra fertilizer, they'll get it with the roses. I think you're open season on those.
Next one is any tips on identifying new growth versus rose rosette disease, or RRD?
Well, you can find a lot of pictures on rose rosette disease online. I don't have any, luckily don't have any samples of that down here. It's an interesting discussion because it frankly, most issues, we talked about wind earlier, spores blow around, black spot mildew, rosette disease is a different creature. And that would be transferred only by two ways. If I had the problem and I cut a rose with my pruners and then went and cut another one, I'm transferring the pathogen through the tissue, or that's a bug problem. What I've read so far is it's not quite made its way into Western Washington, but it tends to get the native rose species. I know it was over in Idaho. Last time I checked, they'd found a few confirmed cases, but it tends to affect the native roses, which in turn the bug sucks the juice out of and then flies across out of the green belt or wherever it is and gets our landscape rose, and then we have it. If you have rosette, it gets thrown in the garbage. Get rid of that thing. You don't want to take the chance of getting the rest of your roses infected. I would just say this, it's not one rose is more prone to another to this. This is a problem that could probably get on any rose. I'll speak for us, and I know the nurseries are on the same boat. When we buy in roses bare root, the Department of Agriculture tests everything, and we have what's called virus indexing, or VC certified rose stock. So when we ship plants in, it's 1 in a million that I would ever see like, that doesn't look quite right. Get it out of here before we take a chance. I haven't seen any for a number of years that came in with our roses that even had the light inkling of rose mosaic virus or rosette or any of these viral issues. So I think you feel safe purchasing them from a reputable nursery. I would watch it a little more careful if I live near Greenbelt. And I think at this point, it's probably an Eastern Washington kind of thing. I have not heard they've confirmed it in Rosa Pensapo or Nootka Rose or some of the stuff that we would find in our woods as of yet.
Okay, next one, grafted roses.
Yep.
Is there any way to know what the rootstock is?
All the rootstock, we called it Dr. Huey rose forever. It's honestly, it's a viable rootstock to graft roses on, but it's just a nominal garbage double red rose that doesn't look or smell like much of anything. I've seen roses that die revert to the rootstock, and then you send me a picture like, what's this rose? It's not what I bought. If you've got canes coming off below where that rose is grafted, this would only happen with budded or grafted roses. It's time to let it go. You just get that rose out of there and try to get a new one. Again, if it's own root, never have to take that chance. But if you want a name for it, they traditionally have called it the Dr. Huey rootstock. It's the same roots all the rose growers use as a budding stock.
Okay, we've got a customer has some deer issues and replanted the rose into a container.
Yep.
They're getting some growth out of the base. They want to pinch that back, or what should they do?
No, I mean, again, when they say base, I would probably, maybe they can send a picture, but if it's an own root rose, there's another cane for you if you want a fuller plant. If that growth is coming off below the graft and then it's not the rose you want. So we would remove that. So maybe look really closely at the base, see if it's a budded variety or grafted one, or if it's own root. If it's own root, it's just going to be another cane to enjoy down the road. So maybe looking at your plant, is there room for another cane? Is it going to make it too congested? If you're kind of curious, just send a picture. Maybe I can figure it out by looking at it.
I've got one more here. One of our customers has a nice big grandiflora that reaches up to 8 feet.
Yep.
They're wondering if they need to cut it back to around 5 feet or hip tall in the fall.
In the fall.
Or in the winter, sorry.
Yeah, well, we do it usually, again, I said President's Day in February, typically like Veterans Weekend, early mid-November is when we would kind of want to do this for fall. I don't know that I'd answer for you because I think, again, this is your rose. If you like it tall, you're not breaking the law because you want to leave more wood and let it get tall. If you like it that way, don't prune it back quite as hard. If you want to get it down lower, then absolutely cut it back a little more. It's not going to matter to the rose, kind of probably depending on maybe where you have it planted. If you have some big area and you need something tall kind of as a background plant, I'd leave it alone myself. and treat it more like a climber. Maybe we tidy it up, thin it out a little bit, leave the structure we want a little taller, and then off we go for another year.
Trevor, that's all I got for questions.
All right. We got some good ones. Thanks for joining us again today. Again, I mentioned the discounts. It's not raining now. I don't think it might a little more this afternoon. Tomorrow was looking a little better. I know a lot of folks are home on holiday. We're open 10 to 5, just an hour later for Memorial Day. We'll be here all day tomorrow too, but sale starts today. You got all the way till Friday. Just let them know at the cashier you were at the Trevor's Boring Rose class this morning, and they'll hit the magic discount button and you'll get yourself the discounts we talked about. So hopefully you'll join us down here. I'll see you hopefully again for a summer pruning class on the 18th. I just wanted to mention one thing at the end. You know, Everett, you know, kind of our large local city here across the valley. That's where I live. We have the Sorticulture Festival coming up here, which is a great place to come, shop for some plants, lots of yard art. There are probably a little less plants and more art down there. Sunnyside's going to be involved this year. We'll have a nice booth with plants down there. I'll be doing talks down there on Friday. Saturday, we'll have Cisco in the house. I'll be hanging with him. And then Sunday, I'll do another talk as well on the stage. But certainly if you're in the neighborhood or live locally here, pop up to it's in downtown Everett, right on Hewitt and Colby, right in, they take over downtown the weekend of 6/10, 6/11, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that weekend. Make sure you mark Sorticulture on your calendar. I think that'll be a fun little kind of garden and plants and arts festival that we do here locally in Everett. So thanks again for joining us today. We'll turn the rain tap off here one of these days. We'll get some sunshine here coming this week, and hopefully we'll see you down at the nursery.